Did a woman solve her own murder from beyond the grave? Hello, true crimerers. This is the case of Teresita Basa. Viewer discretion is advised. Teresita Basa was born in the Philippines in 1929. By the early 1960s, she would end up moving to the United States because she just needed a change in life and wanted a better future. She had originally come here to, I guess, go to music school, and that was something that was a big passion of hers. But she would actually end up working at Edgewater Hospital, and that was located in Chicago, Illinois, and she was a respiratory therapist, I believe. While she was doing that, she was still trying to pursue a career in the music field as well. She loved to teach people, especially, instruments like the piano. On the afternoon and evening of February 21st, 1977, Teresita had, done her work for the day at the hospital, and then she went back to her apartment. Later on that same evening, on February 21st, 1977, a coworker would give Teresita a phone call. They had their normal conversation as two friends would typically have over the phone. Lasted maybe 15-20 minutes, and then Teresita said that she was expecting company that night. Not too soon after this call was over, neighbors of Teresita began to smell smoke, and they began to see smoke kind of billowing from Teresita's apartment. And so they obviously called 911 to get the fire department there as soon as humanly possible. Firefighters arrive, they get the door down safely, they get into the apartment, and there is a small fire inside, and so they put the fire out. And when they get closer to basically where the fire was and the source of the fire, they realize that it was a mattress that had been burnt completely. When they moved the mattress is when they found something absolutely horrible. It was a human body. This individual, a woman, was partially burned underneath the mattress, and she had a knife sticking out of her chest. It wouldn't take long to confirm the identity of the victim, and unfortunately, it was confirmed to be that of 47-year-old Teresita Basa. She was taken to the coroner, and when they did the autopsy, they determined that it was the knife wound to her chest that was the fatal wound, not the fire. They also could not determine if she had for sure been sexually assaulted, but it did not appear that she was. Obviously, they would determine that the reason the fire was there was because whoever killed Teresita was clearly trying to burn away the evidence, and for the most part, they were actually pretty successful. The apartment itself definitely experienced pretty significant fire damage. It wasn't completely destroyed by any means, but it was pretty bad. So any kind of evidence that may have been left behind by the killer, like fingerprints or maybe hair, anything like that, unfortunately was pretty much burned up in the fire. According to friends and family, nothing really appeared to be stolen. There wasn't any sign of forced entry into the apartment. And with there being no evidence of a sexual assault, this appeared to be just so incredibly random. And finding a motive was difficult. I guess Teresita was involved with a man around that time, and allegedly there was rumors of an argument that took place between the two of them, but ultimately when police investigated this particular man, they ruled him out as it wasn't possible for him to have committed this murder. I guess based on his whereabouts or whatever the case may be, but they were able to confirm it. The only really significant evidence that police could collect from the crime scene, there was a handwritten note that was in Teresita's handwriting. That note said, "Get theater tickets for AS." So AS, the initials. However, at the time, police didn't know who AS was. They also didn't know if AS had anything to do with this. It was just something they saw in her apartment they thought maybe could be relevant. But it really did kind of create a dead end. For the next 4 or 5 months or so, police were investigating any leads or tips that they could get, but there was nothing. Teresita was well known. They interviewed people who she worked with at the hospital. They interviewed maybe people that she helped teach piano to. They looked everywhere for a suspect, and every time they looked for someone, they apparently just couldn't find anyone. No one fit the bill of who would do this, and everyone's alibis checked out, and this could very well have just been an incredibly random murderer. Someone found their way into her apartment and killed her. But for what reason, again, completely unknown. 6 months after she was murdered, though, a very, very unusual development. Something you don't necessarily see a lot of. One of Teresita's co-workers, a doctor, his name was Jose Chua Jr. He and his wife were also originally from the Philippines. His wife was named Remy, and he reached out to detectives who were investigating Teresita's case with some bizarre information, something it was very hard for them to kind of like at first process or even take seriously. Remy had told her husband, the doctor who worked with Teresita, that she had a dream. Or I should say, she had visions. And it was allegedly the ghost of Teresita Basa. Teresita, in these dreams and visions, she was urging Remy to tell her husband to go to police. But at first, her husband was like, with what? Like, with what do I go to police with? I mean, I can't just say there was a dream my wife had and then, he would need more. And then one night, Remy woke her husband up, who was taking a nap, and he said that Remy sounded different, that it wasn't her voice. And Remy was speaking in a way that he wasn't used to. Remy said that she was Teresita. So, allegedly, Teresita, I guess, possessing, Remy would tell, and the husband, he would go by Joe, she would tell Joe that the man who killed me, his name was Alan Showery. And Alan was actually an orderly who worked at the hospital with Joe and Teresita. And then suddenly, Remy kind of awoke, if you will, and she had no memory of anything she had just said to her husband. Joe was still a little hesitant about going to police, which I understand, like, hey, my wife's having dreams claiming that the ghost of the victim is telling them, all of this. So he didn't go to police then either. And then, allegedly, Teresita channeled herself through Remy again. And I guess Teresita told Joe, why didn't you go to police? Why aren't you listening to me? And Joe said, I can't just go to police saying, all of this. I have no evidence to give them, no actual physical evidence, which is true. Like, he doesn't. And so it would make it very difficult to convince police just based on someone claiming they had a vision or a dream. Unfortunately, you can't put dreams into evidence. So now, Teresita, allegedly, tells Joe, well, what if I could get you evidence? What if I could tell you where to get evidence? And he's like, okay. Teresita, through Remy, told Joe, well, the person who killed me, Alan, he stole some of my jewelry, and he gave that jewelry to his girlfriend. Now, this is specific. This is a very specific detail. So this time, Joe finally goes to police to tell them everything. and that if they want evidence, then look at Alan because he may have given jewelry that was Teresita's to his girlfriend. Before police would go to Alan or hit Alan's girlfriend for any of this, they wanted to confirm who he was. They checked him out, he was an orderly at the hospital. I guess he wasn't really well known at the hospital. It doesn't sound like he was ever questioned during the initial investigation. He didn't come up on anyone's radar, but he did live really close to Teresita. And when police would interview people again at the hospital, they did say that, oh yeah, Alan was supposed to go fix Teresita's TV. They didn't know when. They just knew that it was something that was happening. Police hadn't also put out the AS part of that note, but the AS thing is like, okay, Alan Showery, or Showery, I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name. So now at this point, police, they bring Alan in for questioning. He says, he actually admits, yes, I did go to Teresita's apartment that night to fix her television. But then he said when he got to the apartment, he realized he didn't have his tools in his car, and so he couldn't repair the TV that night, and so he just left and then didn't go back. Police were now they were questioning this, obviously, at this point. So they find out where Alan's girlfriend is, and so they go to his girlfriend, and they ask her, did Alan give you any gifts around this time frame? In particular, after this date. So basically after Teresita was murdered. She said, yes, he gave me a couple items of jewelry. She still had the jewelry. She gave that over to police. Police, without telling Teresita's family anything at this point, just to, get a better confirmation, they showed the jewelry pieces to her family members. The family members said, those are Teresita's. Those are her jewelry items, and they were missing that night. So now this proves that Alan gave stolen jewelry that was stolen from Teresita to his girlfriend. They also, by his own admission, know he was in her apartment that very night. So police bring Alan back in again for questioning. This time they present him with all of the evidence of the stolen jewelry, the note with the initials AS, about the theater tickets. Not really sure what the relevance was with the theater tickets aspect, but when presented with all of the evidence, Alan confessed. He said, yes, I did it. Basically what he said was he went there to fix her television, and then he didn't actually forget his tools. He did repair her television that night, and then he left. Then he said his plan was to go back and rob her. And so when he came back, he just knocked on the door, and because she knew who he was, he had just been there earlier that night to fix her TV, she just opened the door for him and let him back in. That's when she turned her back to him, and then he grabbed her from behind and attacked her forcefully. And then for whatever reason, he just took out a knife and he stabbed her in the chest. He then threw her body on the ground, took her mattress, placed it over her body, and lit the mattress on fire, to his own admission, to burn evidence. He then stole some jewelry items and took off, but he didn't really steal much of anything else. So he gives a flat-out confession. I did it, here's how I did it, here's why I did it. But then he still goes to trial because he still pleads not guilty. His first trial ended in a mistrial for reasons I'm not 100% sure why. And then he was ordered to go to trial a second time. And so on February 23rd, 1979, he elected not to go to trial this time, but instead, he just flat out pled guilty to the murder. This man only got 14 years in prison. 14 years. Shortly after he was incarcerated, he tried to get the entire conviction thrown out because the investigation had hinged on the testimony of someone who said they received all of this information from a ghost, from the ghost of the victim. I guess how police got to that conclusion really was sort of irrelevant because they had physical evidence now at this point. They had the jewelry that was confirmed to belong to Teresita that was stolen, admittedly, by Alan and given to Alan's girlfriend. They had the note with his initials. They have his admission of being in the apartment that night. And then they have his confession. They had his confession. He said he did it. How they got to that conclusion is, kind of crazy as it sounds. He still admitted to doing it. He still said he killed her. But here's the crazy part. So he was sentenced to just the 14 years in prison. But he was released early on parole in 1983. He only served a few years in prison for the brutal, premeditated murder of Teresita Basa. He planned this. He calculated it. He went to her apartment, left, and then made the decision to go back, kill her, and rob her. And he only served about 4-ish years in prison for all of it. And then allegedly he just moved to New York, and then I don't know what happened to him after that. I just have so many questions. Like, how? I believe in ghosts. I really do. I believe in the supernatural. Call me crazy if you will, right? But I've always had a very hard time believing in, like, possession and, psychics and getting information from beyond the grave. But this turned out to be true. It turned out to be exactly what this woman said it was. I don't 100% know how to explain that. She didn't work directly with Teresita. Her husband did. Maybe her husband knew who killed Teresita, but maybe he was afraid to just outright confront that man or outright tell police about that man for his own safety. But then he ended up telling police that man's name because of what his wife said. So I don't know. I don't know. He didn't have involvement. This husband he had no involvement in Teresita's murder. None. Her coworker, the husband of the wife who had the visions. So he didn't have any kind of motive in this. And if he did, why would he call attention to himself? It's just truly bizarre that his wife had such specific information and knew about the jewelry when really no one else did. That wasn't really public information. Alan Showery's name never really came up in initial speculations. He kind of just flew under the radar. So for her to just say that name, and then that's the correct name, what? I don't have words. Regardless, though, that couple, especially Remy, they helped solve this case. They helped get Teresita justice, and that's ultimately what's most important. Unfortunately, Teresita didn't get the best justice, as her murderer was set free just a few years after he was convicted, but at least she got something. I just wish it was a lot more. She was a very happy, very outgoing woman. She loved being in the United States. She loved her job at the hospital. She loved teaching, kids how to play the piano and instruments. She was just a really lovely woman. And she met such a brutal, untimely end by a man who just wanted to steal a couple pieces of jewelry. And if she did come from beyond the grave to help solve her murder, then I at least hope that now Teresita Basa is resting in peace. This was a very interesting one, very bizarre. Speechless. But that is it for this case, True Crime-Maroonies. I hope you found this one interesting. As usual, if you have tripped, fallen, and stumbled your way into this video, hello, I'm Mike. I tell 4 true crime stories a week here on YouTube. I also tell one over on Instagram, one on Facebook, and then a few throughout the week over on TikTok. So please subscribe to me here, and please follow me on my other platforms if you so choose. The links to all of that is in my link tree in the description below. If you have a case you would like me to cover, just email me. My email is in the description below. Check my case list in in the link tree, and then just send me the name, where it happened, and when it happened, and then I will eventually, I promise, add it to my list. I pick my cases at random, so I can't say for sure when I'll cover it, but eventually I will. I have close to 4,700 names on that list, so it may be a while. If you would like to support me in any way, we do sell merch. We sell t-shirts and hoodies and a wine glass and stuff like that. So please feel free to purchase anything you like. We do ship internationally, so all over this great world. If you have a Discord account and you want to join my Discord server, it's also in my link tree below. Please be over the age of 18 or else you'll be kicked out of there. Sorry. But that is it for this video, True Crime Maronies. Yeah, that was a thing. I will leave you with this incredibly random dad joke. One of the worst of all time. What do you call an alligator in a vest? You call it an investigator. You're welcome. Bye!